Welcome to Seaside Quilting Tutorials. Excuse me. I just swallowed wrong right when I started. So yesterday I had posted in our group. We have a private group on Facebook called Seaside Quilting. You're welcome to come and join us over there. We share projects and ideas and inspire each other with things that we've made. And we also have many knowledgeable people. And we have all levels of quilters and sewers, all the way from beginners up to experts. And I'm not sure I consider myself an expert, but I do love sharing the things that I know with others. So today we're going to make the magic pillowcase. And we do have these patterns available, so if you would like a pattern, just let us know and we can accommodate you with those. We've just transferred over to the comment sold system, and our app is going live. I know that for sure it's available for those with the Apple phones, and I believe that the Android should be either up or going up pretty quickly and so forth. And I'm not sure if the iPad one is ready yet, but it's coming if it isn't up yet. So also the app, you can go to either the Android App Store or the Apple App Store, and just of course search Seaside Quilting Supplies LLC, and you'll see our app. And Barb and Mary are pushing everything they can to get our products up onto the app and make it easier for you to order. Every Tuesday evening we have a live at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and since it's Tuesday, we'll be having one this evening. And if you ever miss them, you can re-watch them at any time, either through now the app, or you can go to Seaside Quilting Supplies LLC on Facebook, and you'll see all the different lives that we have done. So let's get busy. The nice thing that I like about the pattern is that also on the back side it has the exact amount of fabric that you'll need. So not too long ago, well actually a little while ago, it was last year, I created a quilt using a panel and coordinating fabrics. It was, I think it was called Beach Days or something like that. And I over-ordered all of my fabrics because I was creating my own design, and I wasn't sure which ones I was going to be using. And actually I can maybe find the name on one of these. And of course not. Well, anyways, I believe it was something like Beach Days. It had a nice little saying on the panel and all the coordinating fabrics. And as you can see, I way over-ordered some of these, but they'll be turned into totes and used in other projects, so not a big deal. But the other thing that I was keeping in mind is that I was going to want to make pillowcases to match. And if I can find that picture of that quilt, I'll post that in our group later with the pillowcases when I get them all done. And my husband has 2 pillows and I have 2 pillows, so I have to make 4 of these. I'm making the king size, but most usually people use the standard size pillowcase. Now, because it's not my pattern, I'm not going to give out the information on the sizes that I'm cutting, but please do order this pattern if you love to, would love to have pillowcases that match the theme of your room, or it's really wonderful to make pillowcases for children that you're gifting birthdays, Christmas presents for, or other relatives and whatnot. And sometimes I even make pillowcases to go with children's quilts, and I'll put their quilt inside of their pillowcase when I give it to them. So just a little bit of that. So I've already pre-cut my pillow sizes because we have a king size bed, so of course we have huge pillows, and so I'm making mine in the king size version. So it's going to be a little bit bigger than the standard, of course. So I've already pressed my fabric and I've already pre-cut. Let me move this camera so that you'll be able to see what I'm doing here on the table. Sorry for the movement. I was going to do this on the other side of the table, and then I have not figured out yet how will I hit the button to start play. So I've got to search and see if I can find a little gadget that will turn the video on and off for me when I need to. So I've already cut mine out. It's very, very long. So I folded it a second time in half. And the only purpose for that right now is because I'm going to trim my selvages. So I have all my folds going to the left side. I'm making sure that I'm all lined up for my cuts and my fold on the side. And so now I'm just going to take my cuff fabric. Now, not every manufacturer has the same exact size of selvage. Some it's a little thinner, some it's a little wider. I think it's determined by how much information they're putting on the bottom and what their font is and so forth. So they're not always the same size. So I'm just going to line these up, and I'm going to make sure that the folds are lined up. And this isn't how they're going to go together. But I just want to point out, and this will help if I get this a little more even. There we go. I should have done that when I was pressing. So I'm just going to get these lined up so that the folds are all straight. And that sometimes just takes a minute. I fidget a little bit with it. Okay. Smooth that out. And then I'm going to take my other piece. I'm trying to remember what they called it. I'm not good with remembering names, mind you. This is the accent fabric. So I'm going to lay the accent fabric on top. And making sure that the folds match up. And as you can see, the selvage on this fabric is thin. Very, very thin. So that comes to here. This selvage comes up to here, and this one's just like maybe a centimeter or a millimeter off. Not very much difference, but this one is a lot thinner. So more of this will get cut than the rest. So now that I have that all lined up, I am going to line this up with my cutting mat, and I'm going to use my ruler. So I want my fold to be on a line, on a straight line. And then I'm going to double check that when I line this up, that I'm going to be getting all of my selvage. And actually I can scoot this over just a tad more I want to keep as much of the fabric being part of my pillowcase as possible. There we go. That should evenly cut everything just like that. Now, because I'm going through here, I'm going to be going through some extra layers. I am using a 60 millimeter rotary cutter. Makes it easier to go through more layers of fabric. But I think, and mostly it's thicker for me because I'm using the king size, and so I really had to fold it in half because it won't fit all the way across, and it would be a pain to scoop my ruler ahead. And you can do the same with the standard as well. I'm just trying to make sure I have everything nicely lined up. I like to double check. And when you're cutting with a ruler that's long, I often will put a weight, just a hand weight. This one's like 3 pounds. It's only because that's what I have around the house. I don't want anything too heavy because I don't want to mess up my ruler. But this will keep my ruler steady so that while my hands are down here cutting, and as I'm going up and shifting and moving my hand, this part up here isn't going to slide to one side or the other on me. It's going to stay in place for me. That's always been one of my largest problems with cutting straight cuts that are long, is often my ruler will slip and then my cut's messed up, and then I've messed up my fabric. So I put a little weight up there. You could use anything that has some weight to it. So now I have this lined up. My ruler's lined up at both sides. I have a straight edge of my ruler going across the fold that I have down here. And there's all my selvages. And they're all gone, so that's wonderful. And I didn't have enough fabric because I did not plan well for doing this. So I'm going to be using 2 different fabrics for my pillowcases. This one and one that is sea glass, which was one of the coordinating fabrics to go with the panel that I used for the king size quilt. And my king size quilt ended up being something like, I think it was around 130 by 120 or something like that. I made it extra large so that there's no fighting over the covers anymore. He has more than enough and I have more than enough, and we can equally share. So now I'm going to move these out of the way because I'm going to need more room to lay things out. And I won't be needing those right now. Yesterday I got so sidetracked. I was looking over at this corner and I was seeing how dusty it was getting. And then I changed my mind about my setup, and you know how that goes. So I spent a large amount of my day cleaning and reorganizing this side of my sewing room. So let's just set that up there out of my way. So now we're going to lay this out. And if you don't have a cutting mat as long as this, that's fine. You can use a table. You can use anything you want that gives you enough space to lay it all out. So first you're going to have your cuff. Then you're going to have your main fabric, just like this. And since we did all the trimming of the selvages at the same time, all of your pieces should be the same width. I'm going to scoot this a little bit forward. Even though I have long arms, I'm just going to scoot it a little bit forward, and I'm going to line up my edges so that they're all flush up against each other, all the raw edges. Now some of you may know this as the sausage pillowcase. That's originally how I had seen this technique, and Shabby Fabrics has renamed it Magic Pillowcase, and I'll explain to you why in just a little bit, because there is some magic to doing it this way. Now it does take just a minute to get this all lined up to each other. And I will double check it when I put the next piece on, the accent piece. Okay, so I'm just gonna scoop this up for a couple minutes out of the way and leave it like that for now. So I'm gonna take my accent piece and we're going to fold it in half. Now you're going to fold it in half, and you're going to take this and you're going to press it so it stays in place. Wrong sides together so it stays in place. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that because I'm pretty sure that you don't want to see me ironing, and I'll be right back. So now that I have my accent piece so that it's folded in half and pressed, that's going to go on the top, and you want your raw edges to go to the top. And for now, I'm just going to kind of lay this across here, and I'm going to, I've got this thing right in my footing way, down under my table. So I'm going to start over on this side, make sure that everything is lined up, and I'm going to clip as I go, and I'm just going to make sure that all three of my pieces are nicely lined up to each other. And I do use a few clips as I go, because when I go to sew, I don't want my fabrics to shift. I'm pretty sure we've all had that happen to us. So to avoid that, I do put quite a few clips on. This is a pretty long ways to be sewing. And we want everything to stay nicely together. This is a wonderful project for a beginning sewer. In fact, this is something that I always recommend to anyone that is learning or anyone that is teaching someone else how to sew is to start with something like a pillowcase. Very basic, very simple, and easy to do. And it gets them familiar with the sewing machine and the pinning and or clipping. Now, some people use pins, some people use clips. I use a combination of both. Let me scoot this up just a little bit for now. Okay, so now you're going to take the body of your pillowcase and you're going to start rolling it. This is the first time I've made king size pillowcases. Usually I make standard, but my husband likes to be able to fold his pillowcase, the end up underneath his pillow. So even if we have standard pillows, I always use the king size because it makes him happy. Okay, so now you're going to keep rolling that up and rolling that up until now you're going to see your cuff right here, okay? And I'm going to roll this up right until it's pretty much up to the accent fabric. Now I'm going to take my cuff and I'm going to fold it upward. And now I'm going to add this in to what I already clipped. And you didn't have to pre-clip. You could have gotten them together at this point, but I like to pre-clip it. That way I just have to scoot this in and it makes it go a little bit faster. Or at least for me. Now this is the exact reason why originally this was named the sausage pillowcase, because it's kind of like a sausage. But I'll show you in a few minutes why Shabby Fabrics has named it the Magic Pillowcase. And both make sense to me once you understand why they chose the names that they did. And I hope that I'm projecting my voice enough since I'm down this end of the table so you're being able to hear me. But thank goodness for closed caption, because there's been a few times when I haven't felt so well that my voice doesn't project as much as I would like it to. And people were unhappy that they weren't able to hear me. But luckily the closed captioning does help with that. So now I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine, which I unfortunately have not figured out a way to align my room so that I can have my ironing and my cutting and my sewing machine all in the same space. Half is on one room and half is on the other side of the room. I have too many machines probably, but okay, the important thing in sewing this is that we want to make sure that we secure our seams on both ends. So you'll sew forward and you'll sew back and then forward on both ends, because when we go to pull this out, you want to make sure that that's secure and your stitches don't come apart. And we're going to sew 1/4 of an inch all the way down where we have it clipped, keeping all of our pieces together. So go ahead, take this to your sewing machine, do your back and forth, sew 1/4 of an inch all the way till you get to the end, and then again secure your stitches here so it won't matter which end you're pulling your pillowcase out from, and do the same down here, back and forth at the very end so that they're secure on both sides. So go ahead, sew that, and we'll be right back. So now we've done our 1/4 of an inch all the way down. We've secured both ends, making sure that we didn't sew any other part of our pillowcase that we rolled up, because we don't want that to get stuck in with the seam. And this is the fun part. And this is the reason why Shabby Fabrics call this the magic pillowcase, because it's sort of like magic. You're going to take your pillowcase and you're going to pull it out of that roll. So you'll just gradually, very carefully, mine's going to be a little bit longer than the standard, so it takes just a couple more minutes to get this all pulled out. There we go. Once you get it going, it's not too bad. Just takes a couple minutes to get everything going and pull it through. And momentarily you will get to see the magic. There we go. Like I said, once you get it going, it goes pretty quickly. And we'll get this all pulled out. Okay. Beautiful. So now, this is the outside of our pillowcase. And the nice thing is that there's no seams. No seams on the back, no seams in the front. Because these pillowcases most likely get washed over and over and over. The other thing that I wanted to point out about the magic pillowcase pattern is that it gives you 3 different sizes. It gives you a travel pillowcase, it gives you the queen, the king, or they call it the standard, and then the king. Standard is used for twin and full and queen size. And then of course this is the king. And the other thing that I like about it is it even shows you how to make your own travel pillowcase. Not pillowcase. It does show you the pillowcase, but it also shows you how to make your own travel sized pillow to go with your pillowcase. So if you know someone that travels a lot, that would make a wonderful gift. So if you're buying fabrics already in mind with a quilt, and you know how we sell many 3-yard bundles. If you're buying a 3-yard bundle because you know that you're making a quilt with it, just let us know and we can put a pillowcase kit together, or 2, depending on how many you want for the bed, together for you to go with that 3-yard bundle. So don't be afraid to ask us. We're more than happy to put that together for you. Some fabrics are pretty standard and we keep them in regularly, but these precious fabrics that get designed by companies, once they sell out, they're gone. And sometimes we can't get them again, sometimes we can, but most often once they're sold out, they're sold out. And some fabrics sell out faster than others. So if you're already planning a quilt and you're buying the exact amount of fabric that you're going to need for that quilt, it doesn't hurt to ask for a pillowcase kit. If you have the pattern, then you're going to know exactly how much extra fabric you would need. But we also know that too. So you can just say, hey, I want a pillowcase kit to match that. or if you're making them just to give away pillowcases. For instance, some like to donate to the women's shelter or to the foster program, and pillows for them are wonderful. When you're hurting and you're having a rough time, having something like a special pillowcase on your pillow can be something that brings some joy. And with foster children, quite often when they're rehomed, their stuff goes into a garbage bag. And coming from a person who, when I was younger, was in the foster system for a while, to carry my stuff back and forth between homes, between foster homes, in a garbage bag, felt a little humiliating. So if you have extra fabrics around and you have some extra time and you'd like to do something charitable, it would be wonderful if you made some pillowcases to give away. Enough of that anyway. So now the next step that we're going to do is we're going to take this to the ironing board and we're going to press this nice and flat, this top half. Okay? So let me go ahead and do that again. I'm gonna not make you watch me iron, but I will be right back after I've pressed the cuff and the accent piece and whatnot so it's nice and flat. Okay, so now this is all pressed, and I pressed first the back so I can make sure that this isn't rolled down past where I want it to be, that it's all nice up to the seam pressed, and then I pressed my front. Okay, so there's two ways to finish your pillowcase. If you have a serger, you can simply just fold this over and do your seam. This is a long pillowcase. This is a very long pillowcase. You can simply just fold this over, do your pinning, clipping, and go around and do your seam, and it will be all finished. I do have a serger. However, for the sake of the ones that don't, I'm going to be teaching the French seams. Now it's up to you. I like to have my seams tucked in because I know that I'm going to be using my pillowcases over and over and over. So I know they're going to get washed multiple times, and little by little it will fray and makes a mess, and I just don't like it. But that's up to you. You could just fold right side to right side and do your 1/4 inch seam all the way down this way and this way. You will not need to sew on the folded side at all because it's folded. It doesn't need to be sewn. So the only place that we're going to be sewing is straight down through here and across the bottom. However, since we're going to be doing French seams, we're going to, for the first sewing, we are going to be putting wrong side to wrong side. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to match up the seam where our accent piece goes together, right here. Because you're going to want that to stay equal to each other once this is sewn. So that's one place that I absolutely will pin instead of doing a clip. So I'm just going to poke my pin in there. Make sure that it's lined up with the seam on the other side and that my edges are lined up to each other. That way when I sew it, it won't look odd. Okay. Then I just match up my ends, and I'm going to go about clipping. And then from there, I'm just going to make sure it's all lined up nicely. And I usually do the bottom corner, and I work my way back and forth to make sure that it's all nice and straight. Now I'm not going to make you sit and watch me do all the pinning. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this, and then I'll be right back with you. Now I have my side and the bottom of my pillowcase all clipped. You can use pins if you prefer pins, that's totally fine, whichever is your preference. The only place that I felt was really important to use a pin was where I want my accent piece to line up nicely for me. So now I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine. You're only going to be sewing on two sides, this side and the bottom. We don't need to sew on the folded side at all. So once again, when you start out, make sure to secure your stitches, stitching forward, backward, and then forward. You're going to do a 1/4 of an inch seam all the way down the side and all the way across the bottom. And once again, when you get to the end over here, secure your stitches. And then we'll be right back. Now that we've done our 1/4 inch seam, and some are probably wondering, well, you know, especially if you're a new sewer, you're probably wondering, well, why did we put right sides together and now we have our seam on the outside? Well, that's why it's called French seams, because after we do our next steps, our seams will get enclosed inside so that when it's washing, it's not going to ravel. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to take off 1/8 of an inch of the fabric that I just sewed. You want to make sure, now it doesn't have to be 100% perfect, 1/8 of an inch, but you definitely don't want to cut your stitching that you've already done. So I'm going to go ahead and go across the bottom here. And this will be more understandable if you haven't seen this before. Oops. Now, because it's such a long pillowcase, I'm just going to do a section at a time. That up so I don't cut on that. Now, because it's so long, I'm going to cut a certain ways, and then I'll just pull my pillowcase down, and then I'll realign my ruler again. Now, some might be wondering, well, why didn't you just have me sew that 1/8 of an inch? But that's because sewing 1/8 of an inch is very, very hard to do on a sewing machine. So this is actually the easier way to do it. Now, like I said, that doesn't have to be 100% perfect. We're just cutting some of the excess fabric off, and then we're going to turn it inside out, and we're going to sew again. And this will be the last time that we need to sew, and our pillowcase will be all done. Okay. just right there. There we go. Okay, so now you're going to take your pillowcase, add a couple threads there, and you're going to turn it inside out. And remember, I'm making the king size, that's why this pillowcase looks so big. And so at this point, this is not nice and flat. So what I like to do is I like to use a tool that I can run along the seam and get it to come out flat. Now, if you don't have one of these types of tools, there is the purple thing that a lot of people have for poking corners and going down seams like this. You could even use the flat edge of like a teaspoon or tablespoon to do the same thing. But I'm going to take this and I'm going to poke out my corner very gently. So I'm not poking through my fabric, but I just want to poke out my corner so that it's nice and flat. And I run this along the seam. And here's the thing. It's a lot easier to do this while you're pressing it. Now you can also just sort of fidget with them. I'm going to poke out that other corner. So it looks like a corner. And I have this tool in different forms. I have the purple thing, I've got a wooden one, I've got different ones. And I just run it along the seam on the inside to kind of flatten this out a little bit. Just like that, just along the seam so it's not all rolled up. And you can do this right at your ironing board, but it's just mostly to get it. So see how this is flatter down here, and up here it's all kind of rolled up and bunched up. Taking this tool and running it down through just makes it a lot simpler to get everything nice and flat. Now some at this point, while pressing or after they press, will want to pin or clip. To keep it all in place. Now once again, you don't need to sew on the flat side. You only need to sew across your bottom and down your side. So after I have this all pressed out, I'm going to start sewing up here. I will again secure my stitch. I'm going to come all the way down and all across the bottom with a 1/4 inch stitch. And by doing, now that we've trimmed off that extra fabric, when we do our 1/4 inch, it's going to hide our seam. It's going to hide the fabric within the seam rather. Okay, so let me go ahead and press this, and then I'm going to do my 1/4 inch all the way down, all the way across, and we'll come back and take a look. Now all of our sewing is done, and we can just pull our pillowcase back out to the right side. And as you can see, the seam is all nicely hidden. Might have a couple little threads poking through, and I'll just trim those. Oops. That's just from where some fabric was raveled and it got sewn into there. There we go. And now I have my very own pillowcase. And I should have done these months ago to go with my quilt, but being a king size bed, I don't change out my quilts all that out often. I probably make a king size quilt about once every other year. And I figure eventually, I have two now, but I only have one where the sides are extra long so that we don't fuss over who has not got enough covers, which is usually me. So next year I'll make another king size one, and then eventually I'll have enough that I can change them out once in a while, maybe by season or whatever. So there's my pillowcase. I'm very, very happy with it. It's not, it's got some of the sand colors and some of the blue. The quilt itself has a lot more blue in it, but it also has all of these fabrics in it. So it will go really nice together. I'm very happy with it. Now I just have 3 more to go and we'll be all set. So there you go. That's the magic pillowcase. Very quick and easy. The other thing that I love about this pattern is that there's these wonderful step-by-step pictures. And having watched the video, if you watch the video, when you go through, you'll have these pictures to remind you of the steps that I showed you, and they'll probably make a lot more sense. For some people, they can go right to a pattern and make something, and other people, it's just a lot easier if you see it first, and then that brings the pattern together and makes the pattern a lot easier. I'm going to actually poke some holes in here and stick this into my binder. I have a binder that I keep the most used patterns, such as, well, the pillowcase. This will be one of them that will go in there, but I most commonly make the reading pillows. So I like to have that pattern handy at all times. I just have a notebook that I keep patterns that I use over and over and over, just to remind me of the sizes that I need to cut everything, or how much fabric I'm going to need. And it just makes it a lot easier. I'll need to go through here and make sure I have all the pages going the right way before I do it. But that's what I do with that. So I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial. I love sharing with you. And like I said, if you would like to, if you have a new sewer, this is a wonderful way for them to start. Maybe not with the king size. You could even have them start with the travel size. And you could have them make their own travel size pillow to go with it. That's one thing that you can do. And I save a lot of my bits and pieces from when I'm cutting up quilts and whatnot into a bin underneath my table that I can use for stuffing. Excess batting and whatnot goes in here. So if I ever need to make a small pillow, or when I'm making an ottoman, it takes a lot of stuffing for an ottoman. And I probably have almost enough in here now to make another ottoman, which I was going to do for a friend of mine. So once again, our group is called Seaside Quilting on Facebook. Please come on over and join us. We would love to have you along. Every Tuesday evening is our sip and shop at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Seaside Quilting Supplies LLC on Facebook. And now we have our app that is out for, I know for sure, for Apple, and it should be coming out for, I'm hoping, for Android before tonight. It might have come out last night. I was cleaning my room, so I kind of lost track of everything, but we should be able to use that app for purchasing soon. So anything that gets put in there, you can just go and purchase it. You'll know how much of it we have right there. It will just solve a lot of, you know, when you need to get something quick and you don't need to wait for an answer, You'll just know by going to the app because it will be there. So anyways, and if you do need specialty help, we do help people put fabrics together. For patterns, we have a lot of the 3-yard quote books, so we do a lot of 3-yard bundles. So just let us know. And if this is the first time that you're watching one of my tutorials, or any of our events on here, please click the subscribe button and adjust your notifications, and the next time that a tutorial or a tip comes out, or we post our lives on here, we post, we're working on the 2023 Seaside Quilt Along, and many other things are coming up. So anyways, in the meantime, until the next time, I wish you happy sewing.